Welcome back, MTN Giants podcast. Whether you like it or not, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll will remain with the Giants for at least another year. We'll see where we're at in a year. I'm not exactly sure how long this will last for. And based on the tone of John Mara today, I'm not sure he even knows how long this will last for because he did not sound like he was too confident with this decision. When I got the notification, it happened very early, by the way. It was annoying because I just got into work. I'm like, oh, typical Giants. I just sat down. I got the breaking news, saw the word Giants. My heart sank. And then when I read it, it wasn't really all that surprising. This is kind of what I expected. When I talked to you guys last night, I told you my gut told me that I thought they were both staying. And it's crazy because of the 180 on Brian Daboll. Even like 2 weeks ago, it felt like every Giants beat writer, whether they were on a podcast, writing articles, putting out tweets, they all said the same thing. Brian Daboll, dead man walking, 99% sure Brian Daboll's gone. And then just out of nowhere, he's back. And it's just like we're supposed to ignore all that. Ignore the 3-14, ignore all the penalties and the mistakes. And even yesterday, I know it was better to lose yesterday, no shit, but even the stupid offsides penalty, the lack of discipline with Boogie Basham and Kayvon Thibodeau, to lose a game like that has to be infuriating if you want to win, which I don't know if the Giants wanted to. But there's a lot to talk about, a lot of quotes, a lot of storylines, and we'll talk about some potential draft news that came out today about Deshaun Watson having a setback in his Achilles rehab recovery. So could that impact things with the Browns picking at number 2 overall? We'll talk about that. Anyway, hope you guys enjoy. Of course, leave a like, subscribe, and let's get into it. So the 2024 Giants, they set a franchise record 10 straight losses, the most ever in Giants history. They also beat no teams in their division for the first time in franchise history during their 100th season. Now, a lot of us thought that was enough to warrant change. The Giants, of course, since Schoen and Daboll have been here, have regressed every year. They went from 9 wins to 6 wins, now to 3 wins. So I think most of us thought, well, someone's going to be held accountable here. There's no way that both of them are back. We thought at least Brian Daboll was going to be gone, but of course we found out today that's not the case. And honestly, if they were going to fire one, that'd probably be the worst case scenario. So I'm not saying this is best case scenario because it's not. The best case scenario was to start fresh with a new regime. But I think John Mara and the Giants came to the realization that they're not going to get a good head coaching candidate if they kept Joe Schoen. And of course, the Giants seemed hell-bent on keeping Joe Schoen for whatever reason. I know they like his analytics and the computers and the blah, 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 the process, but the results for Joe Schoen have been just about as bad as they can be. And I know he has this great 2024 draft class. Okay, cool. Anybody could have scouted Malik Neighbors. The Drew Phillips find was good. The Tyler Nubin pick looks good. Theo Johnson, I like him. I'm not sure if he's going to be anything great, but he seems okay. And of course, Tyrone Tracy, that's a good late find. He is already 24 or so, 25, so not sure how long of a lifespan he'll have at running back, but a good pick nonetheless. But that's still not enough to keep you around after going 3-14 and all the bad things that happened this past offseason with Saquon Barkley going for nothing and Xavier McKinney going for nothing. And of course, how the Daniel Jones thing played out. I know John Mara was definitely behind keeping Daniel Jones, which probably influences Mara's decision. But at the end of the day, the Daniel Jones thing failed. Whether John Mara was on board or not, which he definitely was, you still have to hold the guy accountable making that decision. And as you can tell by Hard Knocks, John Mara will definitely give his opinion. He'll tell you what he wants. But it did seem like on Hard Knocks that John Mara will give Joe Schoen the final say, right? John Mara on Hard Knocks gave the Giants permission to trade up for a quarterback in last year's draft. They didn't do it. They tried with the Patriots. It did not come to fruition. But my point is, it does seem like Joe Schoen does have the final say. And as I said, John Mara is a pain in the ass. He'll sit there in the corner and say, oh, this is what I want. But ultimately, it is Joe Schoen's decision. Obviously, with the news coming out today around probably a little after 8 a.m., clearly the Giants and John Mara, they made this decision before today. They knew that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll were going to be safe. John Mara admitted that he spoke to Schoen and Daboll on Friday for several hours, which was before the Eagles game, so it seemed like the Eagles game had no outcome on what was going to happen with Brian Daboll's job status. So I guess hypothetically they could have went out there yesterday and lost 40-0 to Tanner McKee and the Eagles backups, and Brian Daboll would still be here today. And even some of the beat reporters were kind of going off on the Giants today. Pat Leonard said, unbelievable, the hashtag Giants are retaining Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. The Giants have lived in the basement for so long they can now see perfectly in the dark. And they've confused that with the lights coming on. Look at Pat Leonard dropping some bars there. Dan Duggan brought up an old John Mara quote, which definitely makes John Mara look like a hypocrite. John Mara said this summer that the question he would ask himself as he walked off the field for the final game was, are we moving in the right direction or have we gone backwards? From 9 wins to 6 wins to 3 wins, the answer seems obvious. But this won't be a simple decision for ownership. Breaking down the options they're weighing after one of the worst seasons in franchise history, of course we now know what the outcome was. Here's the John Mara quote that may be the most insane one of the entire day. Now, mind you, if the Giants had cleaned house and fired both Daboll and Schoen, there definitely would have been some good GM candidates to come interview with the Giants that wanted that job. The point is, if Joe Schoen stayed, the head coaching candidates were going to suck. And that all makes sense. But here's why I said this. John Mara on whether the roster is better now than when Joe Schoen took over back in 2022. Mara said, I'm not sure. I'm not all that confident that it's that much better. So for you to say that this roster after 3 off seasons is not that much better from when they took over, why are they still here? Aside from continuity and not wanting to fire guys, which it seems like John Mara is very against doing, that quote alone right there should be enough to be like, we have to move on. Like, that is a disgusting quote. To say that the roster, you're not confident the roster's that much better than it was 3 years ago when dinosaur Dave Gettleman left the team and his sidekick, Mr. Golf Clubs in Lockers himself, Joe Judge. You're telling me you're not sure if the roster's much better than when those guys were here? Now, Mike Garfolo, who I think does have some ties with the Giants, so I want to say he's pretty accurate. This did seem like an opinion, though, so I don't want to say like this is an exact quote or something he heard from ownership. But Mike Garfolo speculated that next year is going to be a playoff mandate for Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. So if they don't make the playoffs, they'll be gone next offseason. Once again, just an opinion, but keep in mind that the Giants next year face the AFC West, the NFC North, and because the 49ers finished in last, they have to play the 49ers. So the Giants right now, based on strength of schedule, have the toughest schedule in the NFL next year, which sounds like absolute dog shit and bad luck, but it just is another reason why they probably should have moved on today and started the rebuild again. Because I just have a weird feeling that in January of 2026, we're going to have a conversation of, wow, they really should have started this rebuild a year prior in January 2025. It really feels like they're delaying the inevitable, and I do hope that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll figure this out. But especially with the Browns news today of Deshaun Watson having the setback, it feels like the Titans might go QB. That'd make a lot of sense for them. And now it feels like Cleveland might go QB. So if that happens, what the hell did the Giants do? Is it Justin Fields? Is it Kirk Cousins? I hope not. Is it Derek Carr? If the Giants do sign Derek Carr, that might be it for me. I might have to hang up the cleats in terms of covering this team. Not covering, I don't know. I don't want to say it like that. I guess podcasting about this team, because I hate Derek Carr. I cannot stand Derek Carr. He's in like the Daniel Jones territory for me. I just cannot get behind a Derek Carr-led team. And if the Giants sell that to me next year, I'll probably take the year off. I'm not even kidding. Anyway, so John Mara did come out a couple months ago saying he did not anticipate making any changes. So technically he told the truth there, but that was before they went on a franchise-long 10-game losing streak. So a lot changed since then. And I remember when he first came out with that quote, I was like, maybe you shouldn't say that because a lot can change now from, I think it was October when he said it, till when the season ends. And here we are, 3 wins, 14 losses, maybe the worst season in franchise history. Mara did say that finding a quarterback is the number one priority, whether it be the draft or free agency or trade, but it's up to Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. He did say he likes their plan and their direction after their meeting on Friday. Obviously, they're not going to say what the plan is, but whatever they told John Mara on Friday during that meeting, it must have sounded very good. But then again, John Mara seems like the type of guy you can sell anything to, so I'm not all that convinced that the plan that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll came up with was all that great. But for John Mara, I guess it was good enough. Mara did hint that he does not want Brian Daboll calling plays next year. There's a really weird situation with Mike Kafka going on. Mike Kafka's actually going to get interviewed by the Chicago Bears for their head coaching job. And I did find out that Mike Kafka apparently is like a minority. So apparently if he gets hired to the Bears, the Giants get a 3rd-round pick. So it's like, okay, I don't know what race he is. I'll have to look into that. But that'd be a nice little consolation prize. I'd be a little concerned losing Kafka because I feel like a lot of other teams like him. He's been interviewed for other head coaching positions before. So I'm not sure losing him is the best thing for this team. But if Brian Daboll does not call plays next year, which he may not based on this quote, then maybe Mike Kafka gets those powers back. But there's also a chance he's the Bears head coach next year. I'm not saying it's likely. It's probably not likely, but there is a chance. And then there is the quote. I didn't see the exact quote, but I think one of the beat reporters basically pointed out that John Mara was not happy with the Giants defense this year. So that's bad news for Shane Bowen. He might be a one and done type of guy. And I'd hate to say that I agree with John Mara on something, but I do agree I was not too impressed with the Giants defense this year. For all the talent they have up front, they were leading in sacks for like the first 7 weeks or so, but the second half of the year, the defense was awful. Dexter Lawrence was out, Okereke missed time, but the defense, like even some of the things they would do from a strategic standpoint made no sense. We saw corners playing 10 yards off receivers when the Eagles needed 3 yards to go for a first down. It just was some James Betcher type stuff back from 2018. Now here's a scary quote, because you don't want to go into we're not even into next season. We're not even into free agency. The playoffs haven't started yet. And John Mara wouldn't admit whether Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are on the hot seat. So, of course, John Mara answered this question of, are they on the hot seat? He starts off by gaslighting the media, basically saying, well, you guys are going to do it first before I'm going to put them on the hot seat. I got to get better at my Mara imitation, but I feel like it's there. So then Mara says, it better not take too long because I've just about run out of patience. So now you have the owner saying, it better not take long because I'm out of patience. So if the Giants start out next year, 2-6 like they always freaking do, then the leash will not be too long. I'm not saying they're going to fire anybody mid-season, but if John Mara already does not have many patience now, what's he going to be like when they're 2-6 in October? It just feels like this is not going to end well. I don't want to be pessimistic. I don't. But I feel like a lot of fans are, based on what I saw from fan reactions, from Twitter and whatever. I just don't see how John Mara has the patience to let this play out. This team won 3 games. Their roster's not good. So do you expect them to go from 3 wins to 10 wins next year with a schedule on paper right now that looks very difficult? It just does not seem realistic. This was John Mara. That he was asked about the Daniel Jones contract. Mara said, we made a decision at the end of the 22 season based on how Daniel had played that we would sign him to that contract. I approved, and we live with the results. And I saw Joe Schoen answer the question. I think I put it in the graphic behind me. Okay, maybe not. But he had a quote Joe Schoen saying he basically had no regrets about how he handled the quarterback position this past offseason. And even 2022 when giving out the extension to Jones. How big does your ego have to be to not admit, yeah, I f***ed up. I did. I gave us a quarterback room that was terrible. I screwed up. I'm sorry. I misevaluated the position, and it was wrong, and I have to be better. But for them to just say, yeah, we have no regrets. Daniel Jones, great quarterback in 2022. Don't pay attention to the air yards. Don't pay attention to throwing outside the numbers. Don't pay attention to the deep throws. Great year in 2022. No regrets. We could not have seen that one coming. Oh, here we go. Good news. So the Colts announced they have parted ways with Gus Bradley. Hate that guy. Gus Bradley, of course, was the Colts defensive coordinator. And that defense honestly put up one of the worst tackling performances I've ever seen in Week 17 versus the Giants. They allowed Drew Lock to have a performance he should have never had in the NFL, but now he is gone. Overall, it was disappointing. I wanted to come away from the Mara interview and the Shane interview feeling better about things, but it felt like everything Mara said was such a contradiction. Like in one breath, he'll say, I'm out of patience. I'm kind of getting annoyed here. I don't know if the roster is much better than it was in 2022. But then 2 sentences later, he'll be like, I still have faith in Joe Schoen. I like the process here. Oh, Brian Daboll. Yeah, he was the coach of the year back in 2022. He can get back to that. And then a sentence later, well, the defense was not good. We might need a new defensive coordinator. Just none of it added up. So we know who John Mara is at this point. It's very annoying. Then at the end, he was cracking jokes about the Saquon Barkley commercial. Like, come on, man. This is not, have some awareness. Read the room. This is not the time for laughs. You have a fan base that wants to rip your head off, basically, and we've had enough. We're not as bad as the Jets, but the bar is already so low as it is. I also hate... John Mara always says this. When I wrote John Mara a letter back in late 2021, I think I decided to make that letter. I think it was after that Falcons loss in 2021. I believe they lost to the Falcons to go 0-3. Then they had like that weird win versus the Saints and John Ross had the touchdown. But like they went 0-3. I was like, all right, year's probably over, which it was. So I write Mara the letter, and in the response, which I feel like every John Mara response letter is kind of generated. It's not like he's going to write me specifically a different response, but he always says nobody's upset as I am. He always says that. And like he said it again with the media today. And it's like, bro, you are the one with the power. If you don't like what's going on here, you can make a difference. You can make a change. I can't make a change sitting on my podcast, but you, John Mara, are the one with the last name who can make those changes. But for some reason, although you don't think the roster is much better than it was 3 years ago, you still have a lot of faith in the process and where things are going. I don't know how you come to that conclusion, but I guess we don't see eye to eye on that one. I'm telling you, nobody hates this as much as I do. No one hates firing coaches as much as I do. The Mara imitations, it's getting there. I'm telling you, I'm going to nail this at some point. I talked to Saquon about the commercial with the sleeping, and I asked him, how could you not have me in it? I have a family of actors. I feel like when you're doing the Mara voice, it kind of sounds like a depressed Donald Trump type of voice, so I could be off with that. But there's probably some good voice actors out there that can nail this. So go watch some John Mara, go make a video about it. Make it viral. I'm sure you'll get plenty of retweets from the Giants community. We'll love it. So I guess to end things off, yes, it's tough to have faith in the direction. I don't really know what to expect. In terms of the draft order, it sucks being number 3. It doesn't suck. Listen, it could be way worse. They could have won yesterday and been number 6 right now or 7. But I really wish they had a shot to pick who they wanted at number 1 overall. Before I go, I wanted to bring this up before just to be an asshole. But so I know like Carl Banks and even John Mara said today, nobody's going to be tanking in my organization, which he does have to say, because if he did come out and say he wants the Giants to tank, he would be fine and they might lose a draft pick. So I do understand it. This is more so for like the Carl Banks of the world that like just claim this team would not tank no matter what. Obviously, Malik Neighbors was off the field a pretty unusual amount yesterday. So I was like, you know what? Let me go back and look at the snap counts. Malik Neighbors on Sunday versus the Eagles played a season low 70% of snaps. His previous season low was 84%, which was the week prior versus the Colts. So very odd how Malik Neighbors' career low, season low, snap counts were the past 2 games. Games where it would have been beneficial to lose. It's almost like there was a little sense of tanking in there. But going from 84% as a season low in snaps to 70%, pretty far drop off. So it wasn't like a full-on tank. It wasn't like the Patriots where it's like, all right, we're going to bench Drake May and Onwenu after one drive. But the Giants definitely had a little bit of tanking going on yesterday. And John Mara had a quote today, if I had thought that we were tanking either of those games, I would have fired everybody. We are never going to do that in this organization as long as I'm standing on this side of the grass. Like, all right, buddy, sure. So before the Colts game, Malik Neighbors' lowest snap count on the year was 88%. Yesterday, it was 70%. Pretty odd. I'm just putting that out there. Pretty odd. But then again, I respect it. I wanted the higher pick. If it were up to me, I would have just sat Neighbors entirely. But there were little hints of tanking yesterday, so I just had to put that out there. I meant to look this up. All right, so apparently Mike Kafka is part Puerto Rican, so he would count as a minority and could get the Giants a 3rd-round comp pick. So that'd be pretty cool. I had no clue he was Puerto Rican, but that's great news. Actually, they would receive 2 3rd-round comp picks. So, hey, if the Bears hire him, might be good news for the Giants. But then again, it might be bad news because, as I said, other teams like Kafka, I feel like there's something there. He might just be a good coach. That's all I got. Disappointing day. I feel like I've done this so many times with the Giants now in my 7-8 years of doing these podcasts, of just being able to see what's on the horizon. And it's just very annoying because I feel like if John Mara had any type of foresight, he's going to know that next year's probably not going to go too well record-wise, and we'll be in the same exact spot a year from now, but we'll have to be picking a new GM and a new head coach. On the bright side, they are still on the same timeline with the head coach and the GM, but the bar is so low. I should not be complimenting you for that. They should have cleaned the slate today, and they should have started over. These guys, and especially Schoen, have done nothing to convince us that they're the answer. I appreciate John Mara for at least making a hire outside of the organization, but you just may have hired the wrong guys. And as I said yesterday, maybe Joe Schoen is getting better at this job, because obviously last year's draft class was by far his best, and that's really the argument for keeping him. You're not keeping him based on the results. You're keeping him because you're thinking things will be more like last year in the draft as compared to what it was in 2022 and 2023. But even last year, losing Saquon, losing McKinney for nothing, that's a bad look. So we'll see what happens in 2025, but that's going to do it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave in the comments your reaction to this. This was a fun video. I did some Mara imitations, and we found out Kafka's Puerto Rican, so this was an interesting video. I wish they made the right decision, but that's what the Giants do, unfortunately. So hope you all enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys next time.